The story kicks off with a flashback of 5 years prior, with a little girl crying over a cutie screaming, "Brother, Shino, don't go." So I guess that's our resident trap of the series. He gets approached by a mysterious figure offering him a sword, and then we move to present time where Shino dropped the long hair look and is enjoying a swim with the forest animals that can communicate. Back in the church where the bros, Shino, Sasuke, and Hamaji now live. The church, as well as the survivors, are viewed with suspicion by the villagers as we see them whisper and badmouth them. This discrimination is due to the boys' village being wiped out by a plague, so now this village tries to avoid them. The Imperial Church comes in search of Murasame, the demon blade that contains life, which Shino possesses. The church sent them a letter to ask for a meeting, which they don't want to go. So the next day, some bad people arrive to fetch the boy, but he refuses to go with these rude people, summoning a crow from his arm, aka the spirit of the blade, attacking the escorts and chasing them off. After that, a boy from the village arrives and tells them about weird stuff happening in the forest, so they ask him not to go to the church or forest anymore as they know they are causing him trouble. The boys cry and run out. While Sasuke tries to catch up to him in his dog form, Shino arrives at the boy caught in a spider web of a monster. When it attacks, Sasuke arrives with the help of Murasame. They beat the monster and retrieve the boy. When they arrive back at the church, the boys find out that the Imperial Church has kidnapped their girl, so they decide on leaving to save her. Shino and Sasuke travel to the city where they encounter Satomi Ryo, one of the 4 beast clans. He transports them to an inn and informs them that Hamaji is safe and that they'll be reunited with her the next day. In the meantime, Shino wanders curiously around the city with Murasame, where he hears a rumor of a demon that eats spirits. Shino gets trampled on by a man named Kobungo during a dispute with several monks and their head Saren over the whereabouts of someone named Genpachi. The Baldi claims that Genpachi is a demon that cannot be released. Kobungo treats Shino to luncheon afterward. Shino is picked up by Murasame and Sasuke in dog form. Back at the inn, Sasuke leaves for a walk as Ryo arrives with his spirit beast. Ryo comments that while Shino remembers him from 5 years ago, Sasuke doesn't seem to, and he mentions that Shino hasn't aged the result of his relationship with Murasame while holding his face in a very sussy manner. We learn that the sword of Murasame is a mystery, which no one has much knowledge of, including whether its presence is good or bad, since Murasame has the power to tear through all magic, make all spirits cower, and subdue everything formless on Earth. Ryo states that Shino's stunted growth is the result of hosting such power within him, which will eventually consume him in the end, and he will die a horrible death. Meanwhile, Kobungo is still worried about Genpachi being held captive, and he remembers how he and Genpachi survived the northern front lines. Shino and Sasuke arrive at the mansion where Hamaji is kept, and they also discover that Ryo resides there. They decide to stay there for a while at the request of their half-sister. She says, "I am treated like royalty," so she's not willing to leave just yet. While touring the city, Sasuke asks Shino how he knows Ryo, but Shino avoids the question. A demon insect, which is a minion of Saren, is caught spying on Shino. Saren visits a chained Genpachi after several days of starvation and reveals his ulterior motives and plans to release the demon, but standing in his way is the resilient Genpachi who refuses to transform, laughing in the Baldi's face. Frustrated, the hair-lacking man orders his insect demon minions to attack him. On the other end, Hamaji is talking with Lover Boy, who is asking her to stay with him, not because she is cute or easygoing, but because she is a challenge, keeping things fun and interesting. Shino tells Sasuke that they were saved by Ryo 5 years ago, which doesn't sit well with the big guy, so he takes Shino by the leg and asks him, "Are you okay with it?" Even if he is stuck in a 13-year-old body, this makes him question the strength of his little bro's mental state if left alone. While having a tour around the city, the boys come across Kobungo, who crashes into Shino yet again. After that, Satomi shows Shino and Sasuke marbles that represent them as one of the 8 beasts, and asks them to gather the other 6 and locate their owners. Back to the imprisoned lad, he finally breaks and turns into a demon, destroying the cell. He flew out looking for a spirit to feed, which evidently is Shino, who has Murasame, so he runs out of the city to get away from people with his bro chasing after him. Kobungo sees them and starts running too. After getting to an isolated area, Shino fights the demon, who still clings to his humanity through the memories of his beloved. The Baldi with his crew arrive ready for a demon hunt. Shino manages to deflect their arrow wave, unlike the other 2 with him, and so they fall to the river. They manage to escape from the monks, and the demon returns to its human form as Genpachi. Kobungo, Genpachi's good friend, stated to Shino that 3 years ago, Genpachi and Kobungo's soldier team were attacked by a demon that served in the hostage crisis in the north, eating people. Originally, they were supposed to die, but something strange happened, and their bodies have had some changes ever since then, and they are immortal. On the other hand, while the Frit boy is having a stroll with his new girl, an insect attacks them and scars Hamaji's face. Enraged, Rosaki calls upon his fox spirits to do some insect eradication. Meanwhile, the demon-hunting monk, after seeing Shino with Murasame, moves out hoping to get his hand on Murasame's sword. The demon bros transform, lighting the house on fire and killing the monks easily. While escaping from the massacre with one arm, the Baldy gets stopped by Lover Boy, who wants revenge on his big brother for his girl. After the fire gets put out, we see Kobungo telling his bro to move on and find a new chick. At that moment, Shino checks on Genpachi, and just like that, he falls for him to his bro's disgust. Due to the new moon, Sosuke sleeps for an abnormally long time, while Murasame becomes strangely quiet, which happens every year. Shino just sits doing nothing, but when he gets hungry, Shino heads out to get some food, bumping into a white-haired, red-eyed girl from the snake clan, Ayana, that occupies the other half of the abode. In an attempt to become friends, Hamaji sends Shino to the other side with a basket of flowers, to which he angers Ayana's guardian god, Hibiki. Shino is saved by Sosuke, who almost cuts off his arm as a peace offering, and is rescued by Ayana, who shouts at her guardian, "I hate you." The four of them start to talk about themselves, which compels Ayana to befriend Hamaji. There is a town festival, however. Hibiki is reluctant to let Ayane out of her sight, but eventually gives her consent to leave the house, so long as one of the Osaki foxes remains by her side. Hibiki then gives Shino a visit and thanks him for being a good friend to her girl and helping her to get out of her shell, as well as improving their relationship. The snake guardian shows its true form before saying goodbye to its new friend. The next day, while asking for an allowance, Shino shows interest in an incident that was reported in the newspaper. 6 villagers were visiting Perquisite Mountain in search of a new water source, then disappearing. The beautiful woman appeared before them and showed the villagers the way back to the village, where they died of an unknown illness. Sosuke searches for Shino, who has gone to the mountain to investigate. While on the mountain, Shino's and Sosuke's beads begin to glow. Distracted by this, Shino loses his footing and falls, dropping the 2 beads. While waiting at the train station, Sosuke meets Kobungo, who decides to join him. A group of traveling musicians comes to the village to perform during the festival, and it is revealed that one of the musicians is Asakino. When he hears that some people came from the mountain and are being held in a cell, he goes to check on them and gets baffled when he sees that one of them is Sosuke, the man from his dreams and past. The next day, the group gets cleared to leave the cell. The bros ask Shino to go and get Dog Boy. Little do they know he is being confronted by the good-looking performer. Shino arrives to see Sosuke getting turned into a shish kebab, so he calls upon Murasame to duel the man, and although our boy puts on a good fight, he is overwhelmed by his opponent's strength. Meanwhile, Sosuke transforms into a dog, catching Kino off guard. The fight gets cut short by Kokonoe, who tells him to open his eyes and use his brain. It's clear that Sosuke isn't the man behind the death of his family. Realizing she is right, the pretty boy apologies and she offers to do anything to make up for her man's behavior, to which Shino takes her on that offer and asks her to go for the mountain and look for Sosuke's bead. This eventful journey ends with Shino retrieving back Sosuke's bead, thanks to the dark-haired hottie. After all said and done, the group leaves on board a train. Shino and Sosuke went ahead to first class, while the demon bros went to second class. They sit in a carriage with a man wearing a glass. While they make some small talk, it starts raining heavily, so Big Sosuke goes to get a drink. Soon a drunk fella crashes into their room, so Shino kicks him out and throws his little eyeball pet at him. Anyways, the dude is analyzing his fellow passengers, wondering how they haven't frozen sitting next to him. A monk enters the train and senses a spirit on it, so he immediately goes exorcism mode, forcing the cute snow spirit to appear, throwing the old man out. Shino recognizes her and they reunite after a long time. Seeing how Shino is knowledgeable about spirits, he asks him for a favor on how to make her less clingy, as his social life has been surfing since she started staying with him, which the little lad responds to, "You have stuck, bro. If she leaves you, you'll die." Later it's revealed that the Snow Princess had to give up her voice to save the man's life, who turns out to be Hamaji's brother. When the group is back home, they find out Kano and Kanoko are staying at the inn Kobungo works in. Hamaji is moving to an all-girls school dorm. There was a rumor about the guardian of the school, and Hamaji asked her roommate if she saw the guardian of the school, but then she said no. Shino encountered the guardian and isn't very good at dealing with cute dolls. After Shino's re-encounter with the guardian again, this time with Kano and Sosuke, they are relieved that the spirit isn't evil and is there to protect the school. The next day, Hamaji's roommate mentioned how great Hamaji's friends are and then gave an excuse to return to the room. Hamaji then met some girls inviting her for lunch. She says, "I'm waiting for my roommate," but they reveal that she is staying alone, so Hamaji runs back to her room to see a doll on the bed, and to her feelings, that was her roommate and thanked her. Later, Sosuke is tasked to work at a church as Shino sits in boredom. A chick with beautiful eyes approaches him, they chit-chat a bit and Shino hands her a souvenir before she leaves. While walking in the street, Asakeno senses a heartbeat and notices a mysterious figure. So he chases him but gets cut by Genpachi. At night, Kano talks to his mistress, recalling how the guy didn't only kill his family, but also took his second sword and heart. Yes, you heard it right. The man has no heart, he lives due to Kokonoe, the demon princess giving her heart to him. On the second end, we see the chick with beautiful eyes coughing blood. She doesn't have enough time when the hooded figure who looks exactly like Sosuke enters the room and offers her more time if she agrees to give him her eyes. While strolling through the city, the trio feels an immense aura. It's at the shadow whom Kano is looking for, and it appears not only he has the looks of Sosuke, but also the memories. Satomi explains that the guy is the other half of Sosuke, or rather the other half of his soul. In a normal situation, when someone loses his half, they die, but Shino's strong desire to keep Sosuke kept him alive. At night, we see the shadow sitting on a rooftop with his new eye that he took off the hottie because Shino found them beautiful, saying he will get the other when the chick time ends. Kohaku is sent into a room with another man, and just as they begin to argue, Shino comes along. The man threatens to kill both of them and Kohaku tries to stop him. Despite her attempts, the man misfires and shoots Shino in the neck. As Shino lies in the pool of blood, Murasame shows his true form and devours the man. Genpachi arrives at the scene after Kohaku's coworker calls the police. He is shocked to see Shino and carries him out, also noticing that his wound started to close. While riding hard back to the house, he is stopped by Ryo and Yatsufusa. Sosuke is seen running to the house, where Ryo explains that Shino is fine but may never wake up depending on Murasame's mood. Shino wakes up at that moment, exclaiming that he is hungry, relieving most of the anxiety in the room. However, Shino begins bragging about his little adventure, so Sosuke slaps him and leaves. Ryo stops Shino from leaving, revealing that Murasame has still not completely recovered. Later in the night, Shino painfully goes to the shower and stands in the cold water, his body feeling as if it were on fire. Ryo goes into the bathroom after a while, only to find Shino partially conscious in the bathtub. Murasame suddenly acts up and Shino reverts into his 18-year-old body and drinks blood from Ryo's neck. Meanwhile, Kohaku collapses on the streets and the scene shifts back to Ryo, who is sitting in the shower with blood on him and Shino in his lap. Ryo calls Osaki to come and get him some clothes and bandages, while also getting visited by Genpachi and Kobungo. Kobungo accidentally peeks through the bed curtains to see Shino and freaks out. He shoves Genpachi out the door, thinking that Shino became Genpachi's type, indicating Genpachi's preferences. Kohaku returns to her abode and seemingly devours her friend. The next day, she wakes up in a blood-stained room and news about the mysterious death of one of the Zuku Mansion workers spreads. Shino wakes up, still in his 18-year-old body, and leaves for the church, where Kohaku escaped to. After Kohaku explains her life story, she starts to grow a pair of rigid wings while Sosuke and Satomi attempt to console her. Shino appears and reveals Murasame as a sword, calling Kohaku an angel from a picture book, rather than the monster she saw herself as before swinging his sword. Later, Shino falls asleep and returns to his child form, while Sosuke's shadow is seen sitting over a lake, contemplating how he couldn't have the second eye. He later meets Shino in an alley, where they talk for a bit till Murasame arrives. Shino asks him why he took Kano's heart, and he answers, "I'm collecting what I'm lacking." He then reveals his new eye and hugs the kid. After experiencing such shameful shit, the kid decides to go for a walk to put his head at ease from mortal temptations and sins. Sadly for the kid, he was attacked by a bussy sister. So much for peace, Shino escapes and stumbles on Ryo, who hides him. Turns out he was called for a meeting with the great sages of the church regarding a certain child, Shino, that was allegedly shot yet rumored to be alive, and so they conclude that if he is immortal and ageless, then who is he? Ryo gives a poor retort in an attempt to defend Shino by simply saying the lad simply suffers from stunted growth, but the elders do not believe him one bit. Shino, Sasuke, and Genpachi go to the Imamura doll maker to pick up a set of dolls for the elite church members' order. As they walk toward the house, they meet an old man enjoying the flowers and also hear a voice of a boy singing to the sakura trees. Confused, they continue to the house where they meet Daikaku and his sister, the children of the doll maker. For some strange reason, the doll maker had disappeared without finishing the dolls. Shino demands that Daikaku, his hair, finish the dolls, but he refuses, saying that he is unable to capture the expression of the doll. Angry, Shino mutters to himself while walking in the backyard, where a young boy chucks a decorated ball at his head, telling him to leave Daikaku alone. Confused, Shino picks up the ball and goes to beg Daikaku to finish the dolls, also noticing many cat dolls around the room. Shino continues to check out the house, where he finds a room full of life-size dolls. One captures his attention and he stands in shock, the doll was the figure of the woman who had killed them. He goes to Daikaku for the second time and asks about the ball and the figure. Daikaku doesn't know anything about the figure, but he can tell the story of his cat, who had originally owned the mysterious ball. As night dawns, Daikaku sees one of the sakura tree branches falling and suddenly regains the memory of the day he was murdered, unable to comprehend how he is still alive. Murasame mentions the cherry blossoms and Shino follows, only to be hit in the head once again by the strange boy. Joined by Genpachi and Sasuke, they watch in amazement as the boy turns into an orange cat. Genpachi plays along and turns into his demon form, planning on eating the cat. He is stopped by a rude black cat, who was then stopped by the old man they had met earlier. He turns out to be Nashi, a member of one of the 4 houses of sacred beasts. Shino confronts Nashi about the magical barrier around Daikaku's house. Meanwhile, the young boy runs off and Shino chases after him. Daikaku stands in the room, slowly remembering the day of his murder. The boy falls off a sakura tree because his constant begging for balloons had begun to take its toll on the forest. Shino reverts the forest to its original state by breaking the barrier, and the boy begins fearing the return of the murderer that had tried to kill Daikaku. Daikaku realizes that his father had actually died and that the man who killed him is coming for him too. When the man killed Daikaku, his cat gave him the bead of etiquette, which kept him alive. He wonders back in the present day how he is still alive. A sudden visitor visits them, muttering over and over, "Daikaku is my son." Daikaku almost gets eaten, but the cat boy saves him. Ryo visits to find out what happened and scolds them for not bringing the dolls sooner. Shino shows Ryo the doll of their killer, but Ryo suddenly puts him to sleep and erases his memory. When Daikaku sees Ryo carrying Shino, he suddenly gets the image of the doll's face and goes back to complete it. The doll is finished and they begin their travel back. Shino is forced to teach children how to read and write at the church, where he is ignored by most of the children. The children leave to play because Shino had never been to school either, and he is left with a little girl who asks him to read her a book. Shino realizes that she is blind and discusses it with Sosuke. As he ponders over this, Shino meets the owner of the bun shop who gives him free samples and asks for his opinion. He suggests curry and cheese buns, which the owner thinks of as a great idea. Once again at the church, Shino is left with the little girl and he reads her a story about a bird. Shino learns that the little girl's name is Kaho, and by writing her name on the ground, the other children become interested in writing. One boy gets annoyed and messes up the writing, and because of Shino's temper, is slapped. Shino and Sasuke leave, and Kaho is later seen bumping into the other Sasuke. He smiles and pats her on the head. And the main isn't stopping here, as we see the other Sasuke making his routes through all the chicks in the series, and the target this time is his shrine maiden. He asks, "Do you want me to set you free?" Meanwhile, Satomi is discussing a new rumor of corpses suddenly appearing out of nowhere. They suspect a shadow is behind the events. He is killing the spirits to get stronger. The group arrives in the countryside to investigate the murders happening after the regional deity died. The boys need to ask the maiden who has half of the spirits sealed in her, but the kin approach her as their guardians refuse to put her through all the stress and questioning in the meantime. The group comes up with a plan to send Sosuke in his dog form to warm up to the princess who recently lost her dog, which was proven to be a wise choice as we see her opening up to the dog man. She even shows him her sick ink. The next morning, some angry villagers protest to see the maiden and lift the curse. In other words, kill herself so the spirit can move on to new hosts as a whole. As she tells the dog man this, she falls to the ground crying. Her seal flies towards the folk, ending their miserable lives. Meanwhile, Kano comes face to face with his man as he was harassing Shino. The shadow knocks Shino out and outduels Kano. He then outlectures him when Kano says, "You took everything from me." Cool Sosuke pulls a reverse Uno card, calming he is the original owner of the swords and that his family took everything from him. After being defeated, Kano limbs back to the house and meets up with the boys. He gives dog Sosuke his sword and tells him to get his boy, and here we are with both halves finally confronting each other. Sosuke and the other Sosuke, whose name revealed to be Ao, fight, with Shino desperately trying to stop them. He jumps in the fight, but when Ao Sasuke tells him he has to choose, Shino feels desperate, especially that if he kills him, both might die. So he sits in a corner and screams to Murasame, "Act up," making the deity locked in Ao arm act up, summoning a dragon. It senses the other half that is locked in the prince's body. When the girl overhears that her seal was killing people, she runs crying. The next day, Shino heads with Genpachi to see the princess. They meet the princess, who now has grown scales on her body, a sign that her time is near. Although she seems emotionless about her situation, saying she will die soon and grant her retainers wish that is setting them free from their duties, Shino says, "Oh no. Anyways, what's your wish?" She tells him to F off and leaves to attend to her duties, on their way to see the ungrateful villagers. The guardians tell her, "Our wish is for you to live as you are a younger sister to us, and we only have each other left." While attending to the crowd, a man shouts and acts rudely, so Versailles starts acting up, suddenly lighting hits, and Genpachi appears on top of the roof in his demon form asking for her wish. She finally says her wish is to be herself. Hearing this, he brings her back to the ground. Shino releases the dragon from his arm and it becomes a hole with its other half sealed in the princess. The dragon, now powerless, asks for a new host, but Shino says, "Nah, homie, you'll be the host," and so he comes from the shadows and takes the now powerless dragon in. Dosetsu comes to the capital in search of his sister. He meets Shino in the Kanaya Inn. Genpachi, Kobunga, and Kano offer to help. Kobungo ends up making a pact with a demon for searching for a red-haired girl unknowingly. The demon starts searching through the city and he comes across a hottie, but ends up killing her when she's not the one he's looking for, and so he keeps jumping on roofs searching for the red one, till he snatches the little Kaho. Realizing she is the wrong girl, he wants to eat her, but stops when she asks if he's alright. Noticing she can't see, they chit-chat a bit on what names are and how they're worth nothing till someone gives them meaning, and that someone finally arrives to save Kaho. After killing several chicks, he finally finds the girl he is looking for, but gets stopped by Dosetsu and the princess. Finally, the man finds his sister, but seems she doesn't know him. Nonetheless, he knows deep in his heart that it's his long-lost sister, and after a stern talk with Shino, he decides to stick around for her, even if she doesn't remember him. After he gave Hamaji a piece of her childhood, she declares that indeed she remembers. Later that night, Kobunga kills the demon and goes back to the house where the group is hanging. Shino is baffled that all his homies have the beads he is looking for. Shino was sent to a place called Ikura to investigate a case of spiriting away by Ryo, saying that the child came back at the same age as he was when he was spirited away. So he joins elementary school to get close to the boy. And just like all cool kids that are emotionless, the kid is sitting next to a window disconnected from reality. When the kids leave, only Shino and the kids stay. Shino sees some branches covering the windows before vanishing. When his new friend enters the room, back at home, we see the kid's father is frustrated that his boy's head is out in the clouds, since his mother went to the hospital and he went to the mountains. The next day at school, Shino and the kid get attacked by Veins. Shino is ready to fight, but the kid just says, "I can't go," so the leaves disappear. While getting back to class, the silent kid slips Shino, takes his hand and sees a vision of a flower. So afternoon, they head to the mountain when the flowers bloom, but Shino's new friend tells them the flowers don't bloom at this time. Back in the village, the kid's mother gets back home and shares a wholesome moment with him. Then he fades away in her arms with the flowers, saying now his wish has come true. It's time to move on. The boy turns to sand and the mother sheds a tear. The boys look at the kid's decomposed body in the field. After witnessing this, Shinobu fell asleep for a week. He dreams of a time when he fell and a winged man was standing over him. When he wakes up, Shinobu heads to the hot spring where he finds Shino. He tells him that he knows Shinobu got spirited away too, and in reality, his age is 22 and he has the same mark on the arm. Later, as the kid sleeps, a seal on his face activates and he starts sleepwalking to the backyard, where he is taken away by the Tengu living in the mountains. Shino and Sosuke follow him, only to be stopped by the other half of Sosuke, who tells Shino that the princess will be revived in a short time and that Shino will never be able to collect all the beads before that. In the mountain, Shinobu recalls how one of the Tengus gave half of his life to save him. The Tengu tells him, "It's not your fault. My brother decided to do it out of his free will." The next day, the other half of Sosuke appears and it seems he has struck a deal with the Tengu for the bead. He doesn't stop there as he goes to meet the kid, telling him, "I have your guy's body." Seeing it lifeless, Shinobu wants to return half of the soul the Tengu gave to him. Luckily, he gets stopped by the man's brother, who in turn gets stopped by Shadow Sosuke. He strikes the Tengu with his blade but hits Shinobu when he jumps in between them. Ao demands the bead and the kid's body, to which the Tengu refuses, and they fight once again. They make it out and the Tengu pulls a move from his brother's book, giving half of his life to Shinobu. He later awakens to his Tengu lineage as Ao threatens Hazuki after setting the mountain on fire. Shino and Sosuke see the fire, so they run towards it to see a winged Shinobu standing helpless, so Shino calls for Murasame and makes it rain. With the help of his new ally Wind, they extinguish the fire. Finally, they gather all 8 bead holders. That said, it's not all sunshine as we see something is starting to affect Sosuke, making him lose vision in one eye, while Ao's team manages to snatch the Tengu body, calling it a new vessel. Shinobu arrives at the Kanaya gathering all 8 bead holders, but still missing Sosuke's bead of duty. The dollmaker shows off his new eye that can kill stuff that is not human. The group is both impressed and terrified. Meanwhile, Kano and Ryo inform Shino of Sosuke's condition, caused by his bead of duty seemingly choosing Ao as its rightful holder. The next day, the snake deity asks Shino a favor to go and check on Ayana, who enjoys his company. When he left, he passes by Master Finnegan, who mentions Shino's mother, making him feel off and breaking his mind as he can't remember a thing from his childhood. So Ryo tells him to not stress it. Meanwhile, we see Ao sitting in the dark talking to his sister, and suddenly the mark appears on his neck after disappearing from Sosuke's neck when he collapsed. As Sosuke's condition worsens, Shino and the others head for the old church after learning of Ao's business there. To their shock, they discover that Tamazusa was already waiting for them. She sends her servants to attack them, tiring them. Shino protects Shinobu, taking a fatal hit. At that point, all the 8 bead holders have arrived, and she takes away all 8 bead holders' powers to begin her ritual to fuse with Fusahime. Ao attempts to take Shino away so the ritual would not happen to betray Tamazusa. Due to Shino's strong wishes, Sosuke wakes up from his comatose state, stopping the ritual. The beads come back to the owners, and they regain their powers. Sosuke quickly leaves to find Shino after discovering Shino left to pursue Ao. Murasame starts activating due to the wound that Shino sustained earlier and quickly transforms into its monster-like state. Several attempts are made to stop him but failed. Sosuke himself arrives to stop Shino, and after talking with him, he succeeds. After the battle, they all go back to the city to rest and soon go through their normal routines until Shino discovers that Ao still has Sosuke's beads, and thus his quest to get all the beads is still not finished. However, this time they wouldn't be alone and have all their friends to help them.